The morning sky over New Haven Colony was a beautiful shade of purple. 2 moons still hung in the sky even though the sun was rising. Dayoon stood on her porch, drinking coffee and watching the fields in the distance. The wheat was growing well this season. She smiled, thinking about how far the colony had come in 15 years. New Haven was home to 50,000 people. They had come from Earth to build a new life on Terra Nova, a planet 300 light-years away from home. Most people here were farmers, teachers, and scientists. They worked hard, raised their families, and lived in peace. The colony had good schools, clean water, and enough food for everyone. Hyun-woo was already in the fields with his crew. He'd loved his work as the agricultural director. Every morning, he would walk through the crops and check on the plants. His 2 children would sometimes come with him before school. Today, they stayed home because their mother was making their favorite breakfast at the school. Mireille was preparing her classroom. She was young, only 24 years old, and had arrived from Earth 6 months ago. Teaching the colony children filled her with joy. They were curious and kind, always asking questions about Earth and the stars. She wrote the day's lesson on the board and waited for her students to arrive. Taeyang sat in the security office, reviewing the daily reports. As security chief, his job was usually boring. New Haven had very little crime. Sometimes teenagers would sneak out after curfew or someone would forget to lock their storage unit. Nothing serious ever happened. Taeyang was a retired military officer from Earth. He had seen combat years ago, but those days felt like a distant memory. Here he kept the peace without ever drawing his weapon. Everything changed at noon. The sensors detected them first. 12 large ships appeared in orbit without warning. They were not human ships. Taeyang's screen lit up with alerts. His heart started pounding. He grabbed his radio and called Dayoon. "We have unknown ships in orbit," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "They're not responding to our signals." Dayoon rushed to the command center. Other officials were already gathering, their faces pale with worry. They had no military ships to defend them. New Haven was a peaceful colony, far from any conflict. They had never needed weapons. "Try to contact them again," Dayoon ordered. "Tell them we mean no harm." The communications officer sent message after message. There was no response. The ships moved into attack position, and the sky turned red. The first blast hit the power station. A massive explosion rocked the colony. Buildings shook and windows shattered. People screamed and ran into the streets, confused and terrified. More blasts followed, striking the water treatment facility, the communication hub, and the spaceport. Dayo watched in horror as her colony burned. "Get everyone to the shelters," she shouted. Now alarms blared across New Haven. Families grabbed their children and ran for the underground shelters. Mireille herded her students down the stairs beneath the school. The children cried and clutched at her. She held them close and tried to be brave even though her hands were shaking. The bombardment continued for 20 minutes. Fires spread through the colony. The hospital collapsed. The administrative building where Dayoon stood took a direct hit on its east wing. She barely made it out before the ceiling came down. Then the ships landed. Enormous dropships descended from orbit. Landing in the fields around New Haven, their doors opened and soldiers poured out. They were tall, reptilian creatures covered in dark green scales. They carried powerful weapons and moved with brutal efficiency. These were the Galactic, an aggressive species that had been expanding their empire across this region of space. Commander Veckrel led the ground assault. He'd been told this would be easy. Humans were weak, his superiors said. Soft creatures who avoided conflict. One attack would make them abandon their frontier colonies and retreat back to Earth. The Galactic wanted this sector of space, and the humans were in the way. Taeyang organized the defense with what little he had. The colony security force had 20 officers and some hunting rifles. Against an army of alien soldiers with advanced weapons, they did not stand a chance. But they fought anyway. Hyun-woo was in the fields when the soldiers came. He saw them moving toward the residential area where his family lived. Without thinking, he grabbed a shovel and charged at the nearest Galactic. The soldier shot him down with one blast. Hyun-woo fell into the wheat he had worked so hard to grow. He did not get up. The Galactic moved through New Haven like a storm. They killed anyone who resisted. They took supplies and destroyed what they did not need. Some humans tried to surrender, holding up their hands and begging for mercy. The Galactic showed none. This was meant to be a message, Veckrel had said. A lesson to humanity. Dayo managed to reach the emergency communication array before it was destroyed. With shaking hands, she recorded a message. This is New Haven Colony on Terra Nova. We are under attack. Unknown hostile force. They are killing civilians. Please send help. Please. An explosion cut her off. The array went dead, but a small automated beacon kept transmitting. It was designed to survive almost anything. Deep underground, powered by its own reactor, it continued to send Dayun's message toward Earth. Over and over, it broadcast into the darkness of space. By evening, the attack was over. Most of the colony was destroyed. Bodies lay in the streets. Fires still burned. The Galactic had won in less than 6 hours. Survivors hid wherever they could. Some were in the underground shelters. Others had fled into the forests and caves beyond the colony. Mireille stayed with the children in the school basement, listening to the heavy footsteps of Galactic soldiers walking above them. She prayed they would not be found. Taiyang was wounded, but alive. He had managed to get 30 people into the secure vault beneath the security building. They sat in darkness, hearing the sounds of destruction above them. He thought about all the people he had failed to protect. Veckrel stood in the ruins of the administrative building and contacted his superiors. The colony is ours, he reported. Human resistance was minimal, as expected. We have established occupation. They will not return. The Galactic celebrated their easy victory. They set up camps in the colony, looted the warehouses, and prepared to claim Terra Nova as their own. Veckrel believed the humans would hear about this defeat and abandon their other frontier worlds. The Galactic Empire would expand, and the weak humans would retreat. But 300 light-years away, that small beacon's message was traveling through space at impossible speed. And when it reached Earth, everything would change. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on Terra Nova. The beacon's message finally reached Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva. It arrived at 3 in the morning. The duty officer immediately woke Admiral Juan. Juan had been with Earth's military for 30 years. She had fought in the resource wars, commanded peacekeeping missions, and built humanity's space defense fleet from almost nothing. She was known for being calm under pressure and brilliant in strategy. But when she listened to Dayun's desperate message, her hands clenched into fists. "Get me everything we have on Terra Nova," she ordered, "and wake up the Security Council. All of them." Within an hour, the council chamber was full. President Kyun arrived looking tired but alert. Military commanders, intelligence officers, and government officials filled the seats. They all listened to the message from New Haven Colony. The room fell silent when it finished. "How many people lived there?" someone asked. 50,000 civilians, replied Dr. Yuna, the military intelligence analyst. She pulled up data on the main screen. Agricultural colony, no military presence. They had a small security force with light weapons only. "Do we know who attacked them?" President Kyun asked. Yuna nodded. "We sent reconnaissance drones. They arrived at Terra Nova 2 days ago. The footage just came back." She pressed a button and the screen changed. Everyone in the room stared in horror. The colony was destroyed. Buildings were burned and collapsed. The fields were scorched black. Bodies lay in the streets, covered by white sheets that survivors had placed over them. The footage showed alien soldiers walking through the ruins, their reptilian forms clearly visible. "We identified them as Galactic," Yuna continued. "An aggressive species from the Outer Rim, they have been expanding their territory for the past decade. Intelligence suggests they see humans as weak and wanted to test our response." The camera showed more scenes. Survivors coming out of hiding, thin and scared. Children crying, a mass grave being dug on the edge of the colony. The counter at the bottom of the screen showed the estimated casualties, 40,000 dead. Admiral Giwan stood up. "We need to send ships immediately. There are still 10,000 survivors who need rescue and medical aid." "Agreed," said President Kyun. "But we need to discuss our military response as well." The debate did not last long. Every person in that room understood what had to be done. The Gralthic had not just attacked a military target. They had massacred civilians, farmers, teachers, children, people who had never held a weapon. If humanity did not respond with overwhelming force, every hostile species in the galaxy would think humans were easy prey. The vote was unanimous. Earth would go to war. Captain Siyun was in his quarters aboard the battle carrier Indomitable when the orders came through. He read them twice to make sure he understood. The Fifth Fleet was being diverted from patrol duties. The Ninth Fleet was being recalled from exploration missions. They were to rendezvous at Staging Point Gamma and prepare for combat operations. Siyun was one of the youngest captains in the fleet, but he had earned his position through skill and dedication. The Indomitable was the pride of Earth's Navy, a massive ship that carried both fighters and ground assault troops. He had hoped to never use it in real combat. Now he would have no choice. He called his senior officers to the bridge. "We have new orders. We are going to Terra Nova to rescue survivors and eliminate the hostile force occupying the colony." His crew responded with grim determination. Many of them had family members who lived on frontier colonies. This could have happened to any of them. They began preparations immediately. Across Earth and its orbital stations, the military mobilized. Ships were refueled and rearmed. New weapons systems that had only been tested were loaded onto destroyers and cruisers. Commander Yeho assembled his Marine battalions and briefed them on the mission. Engineer Bora worked around the clock to ensure the new plasma weapons were functioning properly. On Terra Nova, the Gralthic were settling in. Veckrel had sent his report to the Gralthic High Command, describing the easy victory. He expected praise and perhaps a promotion. Instead, his message received a cautious response. "Intelligence warns that human military capability may exceed our estimates," his superior officer told him. "Reinforce your position and remain alert." Veckrel dismissed the warning. He had seen how easily the humans fell. Their colony had no real defenses. Even if Earth sent ships, what could they do? The Gralthic Empire had conquered dozens of worlds. Humans were just another weak species standing in their way. He ordered light reinforcements and continued looting the colony. His soldiers took equipment, supplies, and anything valuable they could find. Some Gralthic wanted to take the surviving humans as slaves, but Veckrel refused. That would complicate the occupation. Better to let them hide in their holes until they starved or surrendered. In the underground shelter beneath the school, Iray tried to keep the children calm. They had been there for 3 weeks now. Food was running low. The air recyclers were working but starting to make strange noises. Some of the younger children were getting sick. She told them stories and led them in singing songs. Anything to keep their minds off their situation. Tai Yang and the others in the security vault had managed to sneak out at night to find supplies. They saw the Gralthic patrols and stayed hidden. Taiyang counted the enemy soldiers and mapped their positions, though he did not know what good it would do. They had no weapons that could fight off an army. Dayun survived the blast that destroyed the communication array, but she was badly injured. Other survivors found her and brought her to a hidden cave network in the hills. A doctor who had escaped the hospital treated her wounds as best he could with limited supplies. She kept asking if help was coming. Nobody could answer her. Then one night, something changed. Taeyang was on watch near the security vault entrance when he felt it. A rumble that came from deep underground felt more than heard. It grew stronger, a vibration that made dust fall from the ceiling. He looked up at the sky through a crack in the rubble. The stars were disappearing, not from clouds. Something massive was blocking them out. Many somethings. Shapes moved across the purple sky of Terra Nova, enormous vessels that reflected the light of the twin moons. Taiyang's heart started pounding. But this time with hope instead of fear, the human fleet had arrived. Admiral Juwan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Righteous Fury around her. 147 warships came out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and assault ships filled the orbit around Terra Nova. "Scan for hostile vessels," she ordered. The tactical officer responded immediately. 23 Galactic ships detected. They are moving to intercept. Quan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Send them a message. Tell them they have one chance to surrender. The message was sent. The Galactic response came quickly. Weapons fire. Guan said calmly. Engage and destroy. The space around Terra Nova erupted in light and fire. The battle had begun, and the Galactic were about to learn exactly how badly they had miscalculated. The Galactic ships moved to engage the human fleet. Confident in their superiority, they had fought many species and won every time. Their shields were strong, their weapons powerful. Commander Veckrel watched from the planet's surface as his ships moved into battle formation. They are fools to challenge us, he said to his officers. This will be over quickly. He was right about it being quick. He was wrong about everything else. The human ships did not advance in a straight line like most species did. Instead, they split into 3 groups and moved in a pattern the Galactic had never seen before. Captain Suyon commanded the center group aboard the Indomitable. He had studied every battle the Galactic had ever fought. He knew their tactics and their weaknesses.
All ships.
Execute pattern Delta 7, he ordered. The human vessels suddenly accelerated, their new engines pushing them faster than the Galactic thought possible. The center group appeared to retreat, drawing the enemy ships forward. The moment the Galactic committed to the chase, the 2 flanking groups swung around from opposite sides. The trap closed like a fist. Missiles launched from every human ship at once. Not dozens, but thousands of them. They filled space like a swarm of angry insects. The Galactic shields lit up as they tried to absorb the impacts, but there were too many. Shields failed on the first 3 ships, then 6 more, then all of them. Plasma cannons followed the missiles. These were the new weapons that Engineer Bora had worked so hard to perfect. They fired beams of superheated matter that cut through Galactic hull armor like paper. One shot could split a ship in half. The human ships fired continuously. The Galactic fleet tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Human ships surrounded them on all sides. One Galactic destroyer attempted to flee into hyperspace. 3 human cruisers targeted it simultaneously. The destroyer exploded before its jump drive could activate. Admiral Giwan watched the battle displays with cold satisfaction. No survivors. They showed no mercy to our civilians. We will show none to them. The battle lasted 43 minutes. Not a single Galactic ship escaped. Their wreckage floated in orbit around Terra Nova. Burning metal that lit up the purple sky below. On the ground, Veckrel stared at the sky in disbelief. His entire fleet was gone. Destroyed in less than an hour. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak. All forces defensive positions. He shouted, "They will have to come down here to take the planet. We will make them pay for every meter." But the humans had already planned for this. Commander Yeho stood in the dropship bay of the Indomitable, surrounded by 2,000 Marines in powered armor. He had been briefed on the situation below. 10,000 human survivors, scattered and hiding. A known number of Galactic ground forces, approximately 5,000 based on the ships they had brought. The enemy had taken defensive positions in the colony ruins. "Our mission is simple," Yeho told his troops. "Get our people out safely and eliminate every hostile on that planet. Rules of engagement: any Galactic soldier is a valid target. Watch for civilians and avoid collateral damage. The survivors have suffered enough." The dropships launched. Hundreds of them fell from orbit like meteors, heat shields glowing red as they hit the atmosphere. Galactic anti-aircraft fire tried to stop them, but human point defense systems shot down every missile. Not one dropship was lost. They landed all around New Haven Colony in a coordinated strike. Marines poured out, their armor making them look like metal giants. Each suit was equipped with shields, weapons, and sensors that could see through walls. The Galactic had never faced anything like them. Myray heard the impacts from the school basement. The building shook, but differently than when the bombs had fallen. This felt controlled, powerful. She gathered the children close and waited. Heavy footsteps echoed above them. Something was tearing through the rubble that blocked the basement door. The children screamed. Mireille stood in front of them, ready to protect them even though she had no weapon. The door ripped open. Light flooded in. A massive armored figure stood in the doorway, twice as tall as a normal human in its powered suit. Mireille raised her hands to shield her eyes. "We are human Marines," a voice said through a speaker, speaking perfect Korean. "You are safe now. We are here to take you home." Mireille collapsed to her knees and started crying. The children ran forward, and the Marines gently guided them out. Medical teams waited outside with food, water, and blankets. More Marines moved through the ruins, searching for other survivors. Tane and his group emerged from the security vault when they heard the fighting. But it was not really fighting. It was a massacre. The Galactic soldiers fired their weapons at the Marines, but the human shields absorbed everything. Return fire was precise and deadly. Galactic fell one after another. A group of Galactic soldiers tried to take human survivors hostage. They grabbed 3 people who were being evacuated and held weapons to their heads. "Back away, or we kill them," the Galactic commander shouted. The human response was immediate. Snipers positioned on 3 different buildings fired simultaneously. 3 shots, 3 targets, all of them hit in less than a second. The hostages were pulled to safety before the Galactic bodies hit the ground. The Marines did not even slow down. Veckrel watched his forces being destroyed from his command post in what used to be the colony administrative building. Every report was the same. His soldiers were being overwhelmed. The humans were too fast, too well-armed, too coordinated. He had lost over half his ground force in the first hour. He had tried to call for reinforcement from the nearest Galactic military base. But the human ships in orbit had jammed all communications. He was alone with no hope of rescue. Dayun was in the cave network when Marines found her. She was weak from her injuries and barely conscious. The medics immediately started treating her, using technology that seemed like magic. Within minutes, her pain lessened. They put her on a stretcher and carried her to a waiting transport ship. As they lifted off, she looked down at what remained of New Haven. She saw human ships landing everywhere. Saw her people being rescued and cared for. She saw Galactic positions being methodically destroyed. Tears ran down her face, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. The battle for New Haven Colony lasted 6 hours. By sunset, every human survivor had been found and evacuated. Medical ships treated the injured. The survivors were given food, clean clothes, and beds to sleep in. Many of them had not slept in weeks. They collapsed in exhaustion and safety. The Galactic were not so fortunate. Their last stronghold was surrounded by Marines. Veckrel stood in the ruins of his command post with 300 surviving soldiers. They were out of ammunition and hope. Commander Yeho approached under a flag of truce. Veckrel came out to meet him. "We wish to negotiate terms of surrender," Veckrel said, trying to sound confident. Yeho's response was cold. "You gave no quarter to our civilians. You will receive none from us. You have 1 minute to lay down your weapons, or we will destroy this building with all of you inside it." Veckrel started to protest, but Yeho turned and walked away. 30 seconds later, the building was hit by missiles from orbit. There were no Galactic survivors as the sun set over Terra Nova for the first time in 3 weeks. Without Galactic occupation, Admiral Juan stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury and looked at the planet below. She thought about the 40,000 people who had died, about the families destroyed, about the children who would never grow up. "Set course for Galactic space," she ordered. "We are not done yet." The fleet began to move. The Galactic had started this war by attacking one human colony. Humanity was about to teach them exactly what that decision would cost them. The human fleet left Terra Nova after 3 days. Behind them, construction crews and defense platforms were already being installed. New Haven Colony would be rebuilt, and it would never be vulnerable again. The 10,000 survivors were given a choice: return to Earth or stay and rebuild. 8,000 chose to stay. This was their home. Dayun recovered in the medical ship. Her injuries were healing with advanced treatments that Earth had developed. When Admiral Juan visited her, Dayun grabbed her hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for coming for us," she whispered. We thought everyone had forgotten about us. Jiwan shook her head. Humanity never forgets its own. And we never forgive those who harm our people. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward Gralthic territory. They carried with them data recovered from the destroyed Gralthic ships. Computer cores that contained maps, coordinates, and military intelligence. Lieutenant Yunji spent days analyzing everything, building a complete picture of the Gralthic Empire. What she found was both useful and disturbing. The Gralthic controlled 15 star systems with dozens of military bases, shipyards, and weapons facilities. They had been conquering smaller species for decades. Terra Nova was supposed to be their first step into human space. After seeing how easy it was, they had planned to attack 5 more human colonies. Yunji presented her findings to Admiral Jiwan and the command staff. Their military infrastructure is extensive, but spread out, she explained. Pointing at the tactical display, they have 3 major shipyards, 8 military command bases, and fortified positions around their homeworld. Total military force estimated at 200 ships and 50,000 ground troops, and their homeworld. Giwan asked. Graltic Prime. Population 12 billion. It is heavily defended with orbital platforms and a planetary shield system. Captain Suyun studied the data. If we strike their military facilities simultaneously, we can cripple their ability to respond. But it will take coordination. Then we coordinate, Jiwan said simply. Send orders to split the fleet. Multiple battle groups will hit different targets at the same time. I want their military capability destroyed within 1 week. Back on Graltic Prime, Supreme Leader Krathgar was having a very bad day. News of the Terra Nova disaster had finally reached him. His first response was disbelief. An entire occupation fleet destroyed. Impossible. He demanded proof. The proof came in the form of sensor data from a nearby Gralthic patrol ship that had witnessed the battle from a distance. They had recorded everything before fleeing. Krathgar watched the footage 3 times, his scales turning pale with fear. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. Their weapons were devastating. Their tactics were perfect, and the speed of their response showed that humans were not weak or slow to act. They were organized, powerful, and very angry. We must negotiate, one of his advisors said. Send diplomats to Earth, offer reparations. No, Krathgar replied stubbornly. That would show weakness. Mobilize our defense fleet. If they come here, we will be ready. But the humans did not come to Graltic Prime first. They went after the military infrastructure. The first attack hit the shipyards at Grailver Station. 20 human warships appeared without warning and opened fire. The station's defenses tried to respond, but they were designed to fight off pirate raids, not a coordinated military assault. Within 2 hours, the massive shipyards that had built Gralthic warships for 30 years were nothing but floating debris. 6 hours later, 2 more shipyards in different systems suffered the same fate. The Gralthic could no longer build new ships. Then the humans attacked the military command bases. These were fortified positions on various planets, designed to coordinate Gralthic military operations across their empire. The humans bypassed the planetary defenses entirely by dropping assault teams from orbit. Marines in powered armor struck fast and hard, destroying communication centers and command facilities before the defenders could mount an effective response. Captain Siyun led the attack on the main logistics hub at Krelinor. This base controlled supply lines for the entire Gralthic military. Taking it out would starve their forces of ammunition, fuel, and replacement parts. The battle was fierce, but human firepower and tactics won the day. The base was destroyed, its warehouses reduced to ash. Across Gralthic space, panic spread. Every military installation was under attack. Ships that tried to respond were hunted down by human cruisers and destroyed. The Gralthic fleet that had seemed so powerful suddenly found itself outmatched at every turn. Commander. Yeho and his Marines were everywhere. They struck bases on 6 different worlds in 5 days. The Gralthic soldiers fought desperately, but desperation was not enough. Human shields held against their weapons. Human armor let Marines survive hits that would kill normal soldiers. and human precision meant that every shot counted. On the 5th day, the Gralthic tried to mount a counterattack. They gathered their remaining ships, 53 vessels, and sent them to ambush a human supply convoy. It was a trap. The convoy was bait. When the Gralthic fleet committed to the attack, 70 human warships appeared from hyperspace around them. The battle lasted 18 minutes. No Gralthic ships survived. Engineer Bora watched from the Indomitable as the enemy fleet was destroyed. The plasma weapons she had worked so hard on were performing perfectly. Each shot was clean and efficient. She felt no joy in it, only grim satisfaction. This is what happened to species that murdered children. Meanwhile, other human ships were conducting a different kind of operation. They approached Gralthic's civilian shipping and broadcast warnings. You have 30 minutes to evacuate your ships. After that, any vessel carrying military cargo will be destroyed. The civilians were given time to escape in lifeboats before the cargo ships were eliminated. This confused the Gralthic. Why would the humans spare civilian lives when the Gralthic had shown no such mercy? They did not understand that humans made a clear difference between soldiers and innocents. On Graltic Prime, Hrathgar watched his empire crumble. Every military asset outside the homeworld was gone. His fleet was destroyed. His bases were captured or demolished. And now the human fleet was gathering at the edge of his home system. He stood in the command center, surrounded by officers who looked at him with fear and anger. They had followed his orders. They had believed his promises that humans were weak. Now their civilization faced extinction. Supreme Leader, we must surrender, his chief military advisor said. We have nothing left to fight with, ever, Hrathgar shouted. We are Gralthic. We do not bow to inferior species. They are not inferior, the advisor replied quietly. We were wrong about that. Very wrong. Through the windows of the command center, they could see the sky darkening. Not from night, but from the shadows of massive ships. The human fleet had arrived at Graltic Prime. Over 100 warships took positions around the planet, their weapons armed and ready. Admiral Guan stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury and looked at the green and brown planet below. 12 billion Gralthic lived there. Innocent civilians who had nothing to do with the attack on Terra Nova. She would not order their deaths, but she would make sure their leaders understood the cost of their actions. Open a channel to the planet, she ordered. All frequencies. I want every Gralthic to hear this. Communications officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Guan spoke clearly, her voice carrying to every radio, television, and communication device on Graltic Prime. People of the Gralthic Empire, this is Admiral Guan of the Human Defense Fleet. Your leaders ordered an attack on one of our peaceful colonies. They murdered 40,000 innocent civilians, including children. Your military tried to expand into our space through violence and terror. This was a mistake. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your military is destroyed. Your fleet is gone. Your bases are captured. Your empire is finished. But you, the people, are not our enemies. We do not wage war on civilians. We will not bombard your cities or harm your families. However, your government will surrender completely, or we will eliminate every military target on your planet from orbit. You have 1 hour to decide. Broadcast ended. On Graltic Prime, chaos erupted. Citizens poured into the streets, demanding their leaders surrender. They had not wanted this war. They had not known about the massacre. Now they understood that their entire civilization hung by a thread in the command center. Hrathgar's own officers turned against him. They removed him from power and placed the chief diplomat in charge. She immediately contacted the human fleet. We surrender, she said simply. Please, spare our world. Admiral Guan nodded slowly. Then we will discuss terms. The peace negotiations took place aboard the Righteous Fury. The new Gralthic government sent their diplomats with heads bowed and scales. Pale with fear, they expected harsh terms. They were right. Admiral Guan sat across from them with President Kyun appearing via hologram from Earth. Captain Suyun and other human officers stood behind them. The terms were presented clearly and without room for debate. The Gralthic Empire was dissolved. Their territory would be reduced to their homeworld, and to nearby colonies. Enough space for their population, but no room for expansion. All military vessels and weapons would be destroyed under human supervision. The Galactic would be completely demilitarized for 50 years. War reparations would be paid to the survivors of Terra Nova and every Galactic officer involved in the attack, including those who gave the orders, would face trial for war crimes. The Galactic diplomats had no choice but to agree. They signed the treaty with shaking hands. Former Supreme Leader Hrathgar was arrested along with his military command staff. They were transported to Earth for trial. Vekril was already dead, killed in the assault on Terra Nova, but his actions were recorded in the tribunal. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. Every spacefaring civilization watched as the Galactic leaders were held accountable for their crimes. The message was clear. Humanity would defend itself and its people with overwhelming force. But it would also follow laws and justice, even for enemies. This combination of strength and principle impressed many species. Some had expected humans to simply destroy Galactic Prime. The fact that they showed mercy to civilians while punishing the guilty changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. 1 year after the attack, Terra Nova was transformed. New Haven Colony had been completely rebuilt. The buildings were stronger, the infrastructure better. A defense station now orbited the planet armed with weapons that could stop any fleet. More importantly, 10,000 new colonists had arrived from Earth. Bringing the population back to 60,000, Dayun walked through the new colony center, amazed at how different everything looked. The memorial park stood at the heart of the settlement. 40,000 names were carved into black stone walls. Each name represented a life lost, a family destroyed, a future stolen. Fresh flowers were placed there every day by survivors and newcomers alike. She stopped at one name in particular, Hyunwoo, the agricultural director, who had tried to defend his home with nothing but a shovel. His children visited the memorial every week. They were being raised by relatives now, but the whole colony had adopted them in spirit. Everyone looked out for them. Murray still taught at the school, though it was a new building in a different location. The children she had protected in that basement were her students again. They still had nightmares sometimes, but they were healing. She made sure every lesson included hope and resilience. They would remember what happened, but it would not define them. Taeyang had a new title now, Defense Coordinator. He trained local militia and worked with the military station above. New Haven would never be caught unprepared again. He was older and carried the weight of those he could not save. But he found purpose in protecting those who remained. The agricultural fields were growing again. The purple sky watching over green and gold crops. Life continued. It had to. That was the human way. Back on Earth, the war with the Galactic had changed everything. Other species that had considered testing human borders suddenly became very diplomatic. Trade agreements were signed. Defense pacts were offered. The galaxy had assumed humans were easy targets because they seemed peaceful and preferred negotiation. They learned the truth. Humans were peaceful by choice, not weakness. And when that peace was broken, especially when innocents were harmed, humanity would respond with everything it had. Ambassador Nari represented Earth at the Galactic Council, an assembly of spacefaring civilizations. She gave a speech that was recorded and transmitted across known space. "We are a young species by galactic standards," she said. "We have only been traveling the stars for a century, but we have learned hard lessons in our history. We know the cost of war and the value of peace. We will always prefer negotiation and cooperation. But understand this clearly. If you attack our people, if you harm our civilians, if you threaten our families, we will not hesitate. We will not calculate proportional response. We will eliminate the threat completely." She paused, looking at the representatives of dozens of species. "Touch one human, you face all of humanity. That is not a threat. It is a promise." The speech became known as the Terra Nova Protocol. It was humanity's formal declaration of how they would respond to aggression. Some species found it aggressive. Most found it reassuring. After all, humans only promised retaliation against those who attacked first. If you left them alone, They were friendly neighbors and fair trading partners. The Galactic adapted to their new reality slowly. The younger generation grew up learning about the war as a cautionary tale. They were taught what happened when leaders made assumptions about other species and acted with cruelty. Some Galactic were bitter about their reduced status, but many, especially those who had never wanted the war, were quietly grateful. A new Galactic government emerged, one focused on rebuilding their society rather than conquering others. Human advisors helped them establish better systems. It was strange having their former enemies guide them, but the humans were patient and fair. They did not gloat or abuse their power. They simply ensured the Galactic could never threaten anyone again. 5 years after the war, something unexpected happened. A delegation of young Galactic diplomats visited Terra Nova. They came to the memorial park and stood before the wall of names. One of them, a female named Siracle, spoke with tears in her eyes. "We cannot undo what was done," she said to the gathered crowd of human survivors. "We cannot bring back those who were lost. But we want you to know that we will never forget this place. We will teach our children about the price of cruelty, and we will work every day to be better than those who came before us." It was not forgiveness. It was not redemption, but it was acknowledgement, and for some survivors, that meant something. Not everyone accepted it. Some could never forgive. That was their right. But others saw it as a small step toward a future where such wars might be avoided. Admiral Guan retired from active service, but remained as an advisor to Earth's defense forces. She often visited Terra Nova and always stopped at the memorial. She had saved 10,000 lives, but 40,000 had died before she arrived. That weight never left her. Captain Su Yun took command of the new Frontier Defense Fleet, a permanent force positioned to protect human colonies. The Indomitable became the flagship of this fleet, constantly patrolling the borders of human space. They had one purpose: ensure Terra Nova never happened again. Commander Yeho trained the next generation of Marines. He made sure every single one understood the mission. They were not conquerors. They were protectors. Their job was to keep families safe so children could grow up in peace. The best warriors, he taught them, were the ones who never had to fight because their presence deterred aggression. Engineer Bora continued developing better defense systems, shields that could protect colonies from orbital bombardment, sensors that could detect incoming threats from further away, weapons that could eliminate dangers before they reached civilian populations. She never wanted to see another New Haven in the Galactic Council chambers. Humanity was offered a permanent seat on the Security Council. It came with responsibility and influence. Ambassador Nari accepted on behalf of Earth. Humans would help maintain peace in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through deterrence and cooperation. Other species began approaching Earth with requests for protection. Small civilizations that were threatened by larger aggressive neighbors. Humanity considered each case carefully. They did not want to become the galaxy's police force, but they also would not stand by while innocents were slaughtered. They offered defensive pacts and assistance to those who needed it. The Terra Nova Protocol became the foundation of human foreign policy. It was simple, clear, and effective. Most species respected it. Those who did not learned quickly why that was a mistake. 10 years after the attack, New Haven Colony celebrated its recovery. The population had grown to 80,000. Children who had no memory of the war played in parks where battles had once raged. Farms produced enough food to export to other worlds. The colony was not just surviving, it was thriving. Dayun, now much older, stood on her porch again. The purple sky looked the same as it had that morning before the attack. The twin moons hung in the sky, but everything else had changed. Orbital defense platforms gleamed like stars. Patrol ships moved across the horizon. The galaxy knew that this place, and all places like it, were under humanity's protection. She sipped her coffee and smiled. Her people had suffered terribly. They had lost so much. But they had survived. They had rebuilt. They had shown the galaxy something important about humanity. Humans could be kind and generous. They could be peaceful and welcoming. They loved their families and worked for better futures. But they were also capable of focused, overwhelming force when their innocent were threatened. They were not warriors by nature, but they were absolutely warriors when necessary. The Gralthic had attacked one human colony, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had lost an empire. That story spread across the stars. It became a legend, a warning, and a lesson. Humanity's colonies slept safely now, protected not just by ships and weapons, but by reputation. The galaxy had learned what every human already knew. We take care of our own, no matter the cost. Touch one of us, and you face all of us. Not because we seek war, but because we will never abandon our people. And in a galaxy that could be harsh and dangerous, that promise meant everything.